It's April Fool's Day, 1999, and internet giant Yahoo announces that it's buying Broadcast.com, a pioneer in streaming audio and video, co-founded by Mark Cuban. In the preceding year, Broadcast had lost $16.4 million on sales of about $22 million, numbers that make it sound like a microcap, but Yahoo doesn't see it this way. The price they pay for Broadcast is $5.7 billion. Even in the context of the internet bubble, this seemed insane, although there was something of a catch. When you look at the valuation for internet companies and the price paid for Broadcast.com, you're really talking about wampum for wampum deals, T. Rowe Price fund manager Chip Morris told CNN-FN at the time. What did he mean by that comment? Well, basically, if Mark Cuban hadn't done something extremely smart, he would not be the billionaire we know him as today. Describing the Broadcast.com buyout as being wampum for wampum was a reference to the fact that the currency being used for the purchase was shares, not actual dollars. In other words, the sticker value may have only seemed stratospheric because it was tied to Yahoo's stock price, which that analyst believed was overvalued. Any correction in Yahoo shares would bring down the value of the deal by the same percentage. As Morris continued, it's an absolutely ridiculous price paid with currency that's extremely overvalued. Either way, though, Mark Cuban would receive 14.6 million shares of Yahoo, which traded for around $100 at the time. The obvious question at this point is, did Cuban believe the Yahoo shares he was receiving were fairly valued? And the answer, based on his actions, is a resounding absolutely not. This may be the most impressive part of the whole story. Cuban was entrenched within the bubble. He was bringing audio and video onto the internet, and Yahoo was the biggest player in the space. He could probably see better than most that the world was changing, yet he was able to understand that the valuations being assigned to companies, although presumably rationalized by some underlying math, relied really on fantasy. He explained his ability to avoid falling into this trap in a later interview, stating that in the 80s, I watched PC companies just blow up, just go straight up and then come straight down. I was like, it's gonna happen again. Okay, so Yahoo paid Cuban with a bunch of overvalued shares. Knowing they were overvalued, couldn't Cuban just sell them? No, and that was the problem. He had a lockup period. So Cuban is stuck as a billionaire on paper and has to figure out an escape route. According to the terms of the deal, he was not allowed to trade Yahoo in any form for 6 months. This meant not only could he not sell the shares that he owned, but he also couldn't go short or even trade in any index that held Yahoo as more than a 5% weighting. His best bet was to go short on any index he could find that would be correlated with Yahoo but held less than 5% of it. A tricky task, since he needed to find an internet index that didn't hold too much of the world's largest internet company. He was able to do it, however, and he happily lost the entirety of his position as the market continued to rise. I say happily because the loss of his initial hedge meant that the bubble had survived the 6-month holding period. It was now certain he'd be able to become a billionaire. He didn't dump right away though. He hedged, working with Goldman Sachs to use options to build a collar around his entire position. Collar is the name for a strategy where you sell calls and buy puts. The puts protect you from potential downside movement, and while selling the calls limits your upside, The premium you make from selling them pays for the puts. Cuban set his collar up in a way that the price of each call was equal to the price of each put, so the net price of the position was $0. The contract length was 3 years, the strike on the puts was 85, and the strike on the calls was 205. Briefly, Cuban looked like someone whose caution had cost him. Yahoo shares soared as high as 230 after the position had been put on. Remember, with the shares Cuban had received, each point was worth $14.6 million, so it was looking like he'd made a mistake worth well over $300 million. But then, the bubble burst. .com stocks crashed, many to zero, with Yahoo bottoming out at about 10. Had he let things ride, at that moment his payout would have been below $150 million. Still, an absurd amount of wealth, but a change of fortune that would have meant he never owned the Mavericks or made it on Shark Tank. And had he never done either of those, well, let's just say chaos theory has a way of influencing things all the way to the top. Cuban may have been lucky to be able to sell broadcast at the top, but he was smart to not have to sell Yahoo shares at the bottom. Never be too proud to hedge. Thanks for watching, guys.